Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR. Taking a look at sea surface temperatures out there today. Now this is climatologically what they should be at for this time of year. Okay, July 11th is what this map's from. Today's the 12th. However, you should see warm waters in the Gulf throughout most of the Atlantic, but not too boiling hot. Now what we're going to switch to is what it was like this time last year. Yeah, big difference. A lot of hot water extending well out towards, say, midway between Africa and the Lesser Antilles and all the way up the East Coast, and a lot of hot water in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, what do we have right now, a year later? A little bit cooler. We don't have that hot water that we had in the area of the Virgin Islands out towards 50 west, 40 west. We don't have that extending towards Africa like we did this time last year. Now, last year it really didn't make a difference because we didn't have any powerful hurricanes approaching the Lesser Antilles that would have rapidly strengthened, like Ivan or like George back in 1998. However, what we do have this year is a very hot Gulf of Mexico, just as hot, if not hotter, than last year. And you know what happened last year? We had a Category 4, a Category 3, a Category 3, two Category 5s. I mean, the Gulf was just the center of attention, and all of our significant hurricanes peaked in their intensities right about in this general area. You had Katrina, Rita, Wilma, Dennis, Emily, all of them peaking right in this area. So if this is going to be the hot spot, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. Looking out there right at the anomalies, we're seeing some very warm anomalies up here. And this is up near the Canadian Maritimes, and that is of concern. Why? Because you'd think that if we keep having these fronts draped down, this water would be cooler. But if it's warmer by 4, 5, 6 degrees Fahrenheit, that's signs that maybe we might have some high pressure building in. High pressure builds in, hurricanes get to the south of that high pressure, they steer around it into the southeast United States. I would not be surprised to see a Bonnie type hurricane or a Dennis 99 type hurricane come up here, say early to mid-August. Not surprised at all. Looking out there right now, a few features point out. First of all, we have this big upper level low in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's pretty much shearing a large area, but that is also blowing up convection near the Gulf of Tehuantepec and then up over the Yucatan Peninsula. We also have this area of disturbed weather approaching the southern windward islands. Now, this was Invest 96L. I watched it get sheared, we all did, and then it kind of faded out, and the southern half of the wave's still alive. And there's a small area of low pressure. I'll show you that just in a second. And we should see this move on up towards the west-northwest into the Caribbean Sea, being sheared for the next couple of days. Another area right here near southeast Florida, some of the models, including the NAM and the Canadian, are hinting that this will head into the Gulf towards Texas or Louisiana and intensify into a system. Now we're going to take a look right now at what was Invest 96L. I think it's still an Invest. Not sure if they're still running plots on it. Nevertheless, you can see this morning quite a surprise as we see at least some evidence of maybe a tiny skeleton circulation with convection trying to blow up over it. Remember TD10 last year? These weak systems that are sheared to death seem to be tougher fighters than major Category 5 hurricanes getting a little bit of wind shear near the Gulf Coast and just crying and falling apart. These little ones seem to hold up better to wind shear than major hurricanes do in the Gulf. Although, of course, there are other factors, and I'm starting to ramble, so I'm a rambling man. Nevertheless, you could see from satellite that the shear is starting to impact the tropical wave as it approaches, and this should not become a tropical depression, at least we hope. However, down the road, it is entirely possible that as this system moves on towards the west-northwest, it could develop. Now, what is it facing right now? Well, we look at the shear map, and I mean, clearly right now, the shear is just unbelievable. We have 40 knots of shear, 30 knots of shear right over the top of it, and we're not talking about a hurricane here. We're talking about this little tropical wave. And I mean, it's trying to compete with all this wind shear. It's not going to make it. Then again, TD2 in 2004 made it with Bonnie. Remember, it started to move this way. I remember it was sheared this way. It was sheared that way. And it came out and all of a sudden it had an eye wall as a tropical disturbance entering the Gulf. That's what we could be dealing with. But I think this one may take a more northerly track. Either way, keep in mind, we're in mid-August or mid-July. And so the closer and closer we get to August, the more likely it is that things are going to subside and shear's going to lessen. And with building high pressures and just general favorability building, I wouldn't be surprised in a few days to see this become a feature we need to keep a close eye on. The way the shear's trending right now, in front of it, directly in front of it, pretty low in the southern Windward Islands, but then high above it. But notice how it's becoming lower and lower. Keep in mind, Stacy Stewart told me once that 20 knots of shear is a hindrance, but it can't prevent development. So if a system gets under 20 knots of shear, doesn't mean it won't develop, just means it's probably not going to strengthen. There it is on the vorticity map, and again, all these systems that I pointed out are showing up pretty good. I mean, we have our system down here, our system over Florida, and so we're raring to go, seeing what Mother Nature will bring us over the next week. Remember, I talked about the burst of activity coming with the MJO. We're seeing it in the Eastern Pacific, and the Western Pacific is heading towards the Atlantic. I told you 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more. We're approaching the 2-week mark. Things are going to heat up. Canadian, 24 hours. Here's our wave. Here's our system over Florida. 48 hours, system over Florida is moving into the Northeast Gulf, and our wave continues south of Puerto Rico at a good pace. 72 hours, our wave is in between Hispaniola and Cuba, and our system in the Gulf is impacting areas near Mississippi and Louisiana. Then we head towards 120 hours. Clearly our system that was over Florida is heading towards Texas. We have another tropical wave in the Caribbean, and here comes our main wave that we're watching right now into the Gulf of Mexico. And about 6 days out, I know this is long range, clearly a tropical cyclone making landfall in southeastern Louisiana with our tropical wave down here in the Caribbean. And this is the Canadian. We'll have to wait and see, but again, that seems kind of too far north for my liking. However, there's a reason that this could happen. If the system is weaker, they tend to go at lower latitudes. If you listen to the show, you heard my stupid analogy. I'm not going to repeat it. But if there's shear right now, and our system's down here, and the system kind of gets caught up in the shear, then this model could be onto something. So we're going to have to watch that carefully. The Gulf of Mexico today, there's our system we're watching. There's the huge upper level low. We'll wait and see what happens with this. Right now, nothing to be concerned with. Out beyond our wave, you can see the intertropical convergence zone is active, but still too far south for anything to spin right off of it. This wave got kind of lucky. Again, looking pretty impressive if we do have the low pressure in there, but nevertheless, watch out. Rainy, stormy weather heading towards the windwards. Further out, coming off of Africa, a very nice wave, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Now, you turn to the Eastern Pacific, where things are firing up, and you go, whoa, what do we have here? We have a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane, Bud. Doesn't look like a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane, I'll tell you why. And a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm, Carlotta. And you're thinking, well, wait, this is the 100-mile-an-hour hurricane. This is the tropical storm. Bud is 100 miles an hour because... Well, I'll tell you why here. I'm rambling on this update. This is awful. Hurricane Bud, 100 miles an hour, gusting to 120, a Category 2 hurricane, strengthened rapidly. If you were watching it yesterday afternoon, it just quickly went from a modest storm to a strong hurricane. West-northwest at 12.9, 72 millibars, should start to weaken and then slowly push off to the west. Now, if you are tracking Carlotta, it is currently 45 miles an hour, gusting to 55, west-northwest at 12, 1,002 millibars. It should become a rather powerful hurricane, about 90 miles an hour, maybe stronger, could become a major hurricane. At this point, I'm not anticipating it. And if you look at them on satellite, there is Carlotta, still ragged, trying to get its act together, but you'll see an eye pop out this time tomorrow, and it will be a hurricane, and you could clearly see the bands around it getting better organized. And if you look maybe right on the edge of your screen, you can see the outer reaches of Bud, and Bud is not looking so good because it's kind of lost its eye. As a matter of fact, if we go back here, you can see there's the eye right there. Yesterday it was more well-defined, and a burst of convection came out over the eye and kind of, covered it up. I think I know what's happening. You see these good outer bands to the south and southwest of the hurricane? These seem to be kind of feeding off of the energy that should be going into the hurricane a little bit, so I think maybe that's why Bud's not intensifying as quick. Plus, it's heading out towards cooler water. Whenever you see these gray clouds, you know that is not as favorable conditions ahead, so it's not good for Bud, but for Carlotta, it is set to go. Big time. I'm pretty sure of that. Western Pacific, you're going, my goodness, what is this? Well, this is a very monstrous tropical storm that did not strengthen because this inner core could not get organized. This thing could never get the heart pumping and could never get itself together, but great outflow with it. This is Tropical Storm Baileys, and Baileys is heading directly towards Taiwan, kind of like the Baileys 6 years ago, but the Baileys 6 years ago was about 140 miles an hour stronger than this one is. Winds 45 miles an hour, might strengthen a little bit, but probably not. And it's gonna. Well, I shouldn't even draw that circle. It's probably this is how big it is. It's gonna bear on into Taiwan and then into mainland China and continue to weaken. But as of right now, just a massive storm. I was watching. It seemed to have always had this area, this northwest quadrant, never was able to do what Typhoon in Winnier did and get that convection over it and then build that core up and then strengthen. And so you have this rather disorganized tropical storm. But nevertheless, that's what we're dealing with in the tropics. I'm Mike Naso. Sorry I took so long. Sorry I rambled. And I'll see you next time. Stay tuned tonight. Go to IPR365.net. Tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern. Zach and I will have the latest on the tropics on the Tropical Roundtable. I'll see you then.